Welcome to the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where you will learn top strategies from world-class real estate investors, both large and small. Why not? Tune in and get started today.
The other thing I would tell a newbie is find a mentor. Find somebody who's been in the real estate industry. Go have coffee with them. Buy them a lunch. Pick their brain. The one thing we can steal in this world without getting in trouble is knowledge.
Hey, what's up, all of my real estate peeps? This is Brian Lucier with another episode of the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, where we interview seasoned and sometimes not so seasoned real estate professionals, where we believe investing in multifamily is the best asset class in real estate, although I have been proved wrong on several interviews. So today we're going to dive right in. Our guest today is a gentleman who has combined his experience in property management and restaurant management operations into a career partnering with facilities managers who he has also felt their pains. He currently works as a seasoned real estate veteran of Hero Facilities Services, which is a leading national facilities management company dedicated to providing commercial businesses across America with highly trained technicians specializing in maintaining a wide range of properties and facilities. From rooftops to parking lots, they offer comprehensive services to ensure every aspect of your facilities is expertly sustained. Founded by Tamara and Jason Duhamel in 2018, Hero Facility Services is a veteran, women-owned and operated, fully serviced maintenance facility firm. Hero Facility Services strives with their daily mission to exceed customers' expectations while developing relationships based on trust and results. Today, Hero is operating in all 50 states, providing a full spectrum of facility maintenance servicing ranges from HVAC, plumbing, electrical, handyman, glazier, locksmith, and so on and on and on. Hero Facility Services is a member of SDVOSB, which is the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Small Businesses. They hold an A+ rating as an accredited business with the Better Business Bureau, and impressively, they are listed number 65 of Inc.'s 5,000 America fastest growing private companies. Excellent. So, ladies and gentlemen, and all of my real estate peeps, it is my pleasure to welcome to the show today Facilities, Property, and Project Manager, Mr. Paul McCarthy. Paul, welcome to the show.
Brian, thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on. I've been looking forward to this and have this chat with you. Thanks. I appreciate it.
Yes, and for the listeners out there, this is our third time going around the bases here. First time I had to travel. Second time, Paul, I guess you had a landscaping crew take you out. And now the third time, I was just telling Paul in the green room, 2 days ago, we had to move and finally got our secure internet back on. So all of my real estate peeps, you are now seeing this podcast broadcasted from our new location here on Eagle Beach in Aruba. So Paul, welcome to the show, and I'm really glad that everything's working today.
Exactly.
So Paul, if it's okay with you, let's dive right in.
Yeah, sure.
So I've read a little bit about your background. I stalked you on the internet and went through all the websites and LinkedIn. You're very active in LinkedIn, so if anybody's looking for Paul, they can find him there. So the first question I always like to ask is, what did you used to do before becoming involved in real estate?
So my background was from the time I was 16, I was in the restaurant industry. And I always tell people that everybody should work for at least 1 year in the restaurant industry because you learn how to deal with people. And so I worked my way up through the restaurant industry. I was a GM, I was an area manager, and it just taught me how to deal with people and how to understand the psychology of people, which when it comes to sales, it really is psychology for us.
Yeah, sales all day long. Restaurant, and my background was graphic design. So, yeah, having to just listen to and understand people in that. So, how did you transition from the restaurant business, 16 years old? And actually, I'd love to find out a little bit more about that because you started at 16 and your bio says all the way up to operations. So, can you walk me through that story a little bit and tell me how you got from point A to point B?
Sure, sure. So 16, I worked in a steakhouse, and it was one of those things where we worked 3 or 4 shifts. But mom said you had to have a job if you're going to have a car. So I did that. And when they closed, I went to work for Chili's and started with Chili's, worked my way up to the training team. I ended up opening about 16 Chili's nationwide.
Whoa.
And so that was a great experience. We'd spent about a month there in training. And so the training was what I loved doing because it impacted people's life. And I came back from one of my openings, and being from Texas, my GM set me down and said, I got good news and bad news. I said, tell me about it. He goes, well, good news, they want you to be a manager. I said, that's awesome. He goes, where? He goes, Waco, Texas. So nothing against Waco, but I begrudgingly moved down to Waco, became one of the youngest GMs in the shortest time to make GM for Chili's, spent some time with them. Then I moved on to Applebee's, did On the Border, actually ended up with a local chain that had 7 stores in Dallas Fort Worth, and I was an area manager for them. And then my youngest son was coming along. And so I decided no more 80-hour work weeks. I want to be the soccer coach dad. I want to be there for my son. So, ironic enough, a gentleman who, when I was 16, used to come into the restaurant, I ran into him. And I said, Mr. Hickman, with all due respect, do you have any jobs open with your companies? And he said, you own a suit? I said, yes, sir. He goes, put that suit on and come see me tomorrow. So I went in there and I talked to him, and I still remember, he goes, what's your pay rate? And I told him. He goes, that's a hell of a lot for not knowing nothing about real estate. And I said, Mr. Hickman, I'll prove it to you. And so I spent 8 years managing and leasing 1.2 million square feet of commercial property, ranging anywhere from industrial, office, retail. And that's really where I cut my chops in the real estate industry.
So, from kitchen to frying pan in real estate, you jumped right in. And interesting that he questioned your value coming in. And I don't want to go too far down that, but you had the confidence to stand up and say, oh, yeah, I'm worth every penny of it. And then, what did that experience look like? I mean, and I got to backtrack a little bit here. Managing all those restaurants, you had to know about facilities and operations.
That's one of the things I've sat in the chair. I've had to call the vendors, try to find out where the plumbing guys were on a Friday night at 7:15 with my kitchen with 20-minute ticket times and my front of house staff just making mistakes left and right. And I'm sitting in the office on the phone. And I always tell people that I think everything I've done in my life has brought me to this one moment. You'll see the cross behind me. I put my faith in God, and I think He's brought me to this exact moment because of everything I've done in my life.
And now here we are, brothers in Christ, on a podcast and spilling our beans to try to
Yeah.
inspire other people if they're on the fence about real estate. Because I know for me, it's worked. And I'm here right now and journaling this morning, putting in, I I mean, not to boast or brag, but I have an amazing life. But yeah, I did the 80-hour weeks just like you did. So, anybody who's watching this, don't think that it's overnight success. I mean, it looks like overnight success. It just takes 20 years. So, okay, so here we are. So, is the company that you were hired for, was that Hero?
No, this was in 2008. It was Hickman Investments in
Hickman
Fort
Investment.
Worth. hmm
So,
And oh, I was going to tell you a quick story about kind of the facilities part of it. Was Holt was well known around Fort Worth. He was a very affluent person, and everybody knew that he didn't get rich by spending his money. And so, as a property manager, I walked out one day and the receptionist said, "You got 12 boxes there. I don't know what they are." And my CEO came out and said, "Do not open those boxes." I said, "Why is that?" He goes, "You send them right back." Well, Holt had been up at night, and you remember the old Flex Seal commercials, the infomercials they ran, where you could put them on the bottom of the boat and they wouldn't leak. Well, Holt's roofs were in bad shape because he didn't spend his money to get rich. He wanted me to have my guys go put Flex Seal on all the tenants' properties that were complaining about roof leaks.
oh no. Oh no.
So, so that kind of tells you about what I dealt with. I dealt with the pains of every night when we'd have a Texas storm. I'd just wake up and knew that the next morning I was getting calls. And so facilities has always been something I've loved and hate.
Yes, yes, I understand that. So, in your toolbox, you had a lot of band-aids and duct tape and glue.
Yes, very much so. Very
Okay.
much so.
So I can see the exit strategy forming here to get out of that environment. Nothing bad about this gentleman or what he was doing because everybody has a different operational standard. But it sounds like yours were a little higher.
Yeah.
So
Well,
what was the
I
transition?
will.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
No.
going to say the great part about it is as he got older, he stepped away, and I got every building with a new roof.
Nice. Yeah, that's the right way to do it. Because,
Yeah.
I mean, we were, I was on calls with my maintenance guys this morning. Same situation. We sent out three roofers, three different bids. The landlord went with the cheapest one. And yeah, it was really the cheapest one. And now he's calling back saying it's leaking. And they're saying basically, well, we're not going to fix that. It was a repair. There's no warranty. So now we're sending one of the trusted people that we know is going to do a good job. Yeah, it's going to cost a little bit more, but the job's going to be done.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So the fateful day you went from Fort Worth to Hero. What's that story and what does it look like?
So the only thing that could get me out of Texas was my childhood best friend. Her and I did our first communion in the Catholic Church, April 22nd, 1979. And I was adopted. And I found my birth families in 2015. So Marcy, my wife now, reached out to me in 2019 and said, "I need to talk to you." And to be honest, Brian, this was a girl that every July 26th, my heart would think about her. She was the one that got away. And so when she reached out to me, called me and said, "You know, mom and dad?" I said, "Of course." She said, "You know, my brother, Michael?" I said, "Of course. He took me to high school when I was a freshman." She goes, "Well, mom and dad gave up another boy for adoption that's older than Michael." So another what I call God wink is she wanted to know everything about what it felt like for me to find my birth family. And so we started talking, and we were both on the tail end of long marriages that were separated. And next thing you know, I realized she was my best friend, and it never changed. And so we did back and forth. COVID was a blessing for us. While many were saying we were locked down, I was flying back and forth from Dallas Fort Worth to Orlando for $40 round trip, um, and did that for almost 5 years. April 27th, we got married. I was down here May 16th, got a job with Hero. I was blessed to be selective and make sure I was a good fit with who I was looking for. And I ended up coming on with Hero last November. And so it's been great ever since.
That is a wonderful story. Thanks for sharing that. So, just for the viewers, you are now, where on the planet Earth are you now?
I'm in Melbourne, Florida.
Melbourne.
So I'm 20 minutes from the beach.
Okay. I think I'm about 20 steps from the beach.
Yeah, I heard that Aruba part.
Yeah. Well, it sounds all wonderful and glamorous, but, I can't tell you how many pairs of knee pads I've gone through, how many tile jobs I've done, renovations I've done, cabinets I've installed, the whole 9 yards. So, yeah, I've got the scars literally to prove it. And, you earn that. So here you are, first day at Hero. What does this look like?
So first day at Hero, it was a couple things drew me to Hero. And I have a background in veteran nonprofit. So you mentioned at the beginning, disabled veteran owned. So that was a huge thing for me to find a company that aligned with my values. And when I walked in, I had to come up with my roadmap and figure out where I was going to go. And so as I was doing, I call it a roadmap instead of goals for this sole reason that you and I both know from our experience, if we set a goal and we go down and something happens, we have to take a hard left or a hard right. And so I call mine roadmap. So I have the freedom to take those lefts and rights or get on the tollway, whatever I need to do. Well, about a month in, I jumped on the tollway. Uh, Through my connections with the restaurant industry, I picked up 40 Chili's in South Florida, and that would have blown my initial numbers out of the water on my roadmap. So I've adjusted that. Since then, we've picked up 3 other regions. Myself and another guy. I have 2. He has 2. So I have about 100 Chili's. I'm talking to a lot of national chains right now. I'm actually going to do a LinkedIn Live myself where I'm going to start doing once a month and I'm going to bring facility managers on. And so it's a perfect fit for me because like you mentioned earlier, I've sat in that chair. I know what the pains are. I got a call 2 Saturdays ago from a facility manager that he and I are close friends and he started ripping me. And I said, hold on, let me call the store. He said, okay. So I looked at my computer, found out it wasn't a priority call, which is a 2-hour response. It was a 24-hour call. And the facility manager is telling me that they're about to close down the restaurant. So I called the manager. I said, let me ask you a question. I said, you put it in as a 24-hour call, and now it's an emergency. What happened between now and then?
Ah,
He said, well, he goes, I snaked it and I thought I got it. It was a drain. I said, okay. He goes, but it started backing up like 30 minutes after, and that's when it became an emergency. I said, I understand completely. I said, when you snaked it, what all did you see down that drain? Half bowl, 6 forks, 6 spoons, ramekin. He goes, I broke the half bowl. Is that going to be a problem? I said, don't worry. When we snake it, it's going to pull it back out. And so I was able to talk to this young manager. Most people wouldn't know the restaurant side of it, but I was able to talk him off that ledge. And then I was able to call the facility manager and say, okay, here's what happened. Here's what I did. I used it as an education moment for your guy because I've been there and now he understands. And so that's some of the value that I think for myself, focusing on restaurants, which is what I decided early on, that I bring to the table.
okay. So I have a clearer picture now of Hero. You come in as a vendor or a third party to manage the facility. Your expertise, your forte is restaurants. You know restaurants up and down. But Hero also has a wide spectrum of like industrial, commercial space, XYZ. Do you do multifamily as well?
We do as well. And one of the interesting things, and I'm sure you've seen, my tagline is I'm the aspirin for facility managers' headaches. And every facility manager, whether it's a property manager that has, 280 units in 6 different cities, they all deal with the same pains. Like you mentioned earlier, the 3 roofers come out.
Oh, yeah.
We know that there's good, better, and best, and everybody wants to go with good, but good never shows up when they need to because they're the cheapest. And so that's some of the value that we bring. It's almost like we're a concierge service. We can handle it from A to Z. So you call us, tell us a problem. We're going to call on our partner vendors. We're going to get them out there. We're going to get them out there in the time frame you need. We're going to complete the job. We're going to have pictures for you. And at the end of everyone, we're going to give you a survey. How do we do? Because we can't get better if we're not asking those questions.
So, yeah, we have a lot of questions, and I'm still on the first one with you. And I want to stay here for a while because I've got more questions. And this is the way the show works, right? It's not like we have to nail every question, but
Yeah.
you opened up so many things that I want to ask about. So here you are, facilities managers, where and this is the question, the vendors like plumbers, electricians, handymen, all these guys, are you seeking disabled veterans first to fill those slots? Are they employees of Hero? Or are you seeking out other vendors, businesses that are veteran owned? I mean, talk to me about that a little bit.
So obviously anytime we can partner with another vendor that is a veteran, we love doing that.
Yeah.
We do not necessarily seek out automatically, but I will tell you that when our vendor relations team is going out and seeking out vendors, if it comes back as, veteran something plumbing, or, that they're probably going to be one of the first calls, because we're true-blooded patriots and we love America, and we're thankful for what those guys and girls have given us freedom.
Sure. And I've said this so many times, if you can't stand behind our military doing their job, stand in front of them while they're doing their job.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then it's like, oh no, I don't want to do that. Well, then give these people some respect. So
Yes.
to mirror back what I just heard, so you will find a plumbing company or an electrician company, and now they become your vetted vendors underneath the Hero umbrella.
Key word, you said vetted, because that's what we have to do. We have to go through a vetting process to make sure that they're qualified, make sure they're not a chuck in a truck. You know those.
I say chuck in a truck.
I know. If you've been in real estate or roofing, you know a chuck in a truck.
Yeah, right.
They're the guys that are waiving deductibles and they're never coming back.
Oh yeah, and try getting an insurance policy or workman's comp out of them. That's never going
Oh
to.
my gosh, exactly.
All
So
right.
so yeah, they go through a pretty extensive vetting process to make sure that, because they're an extension of us, and we have to make sure that these people, when they get on site, that they represent us well. Because obviously we can't have 4,000 different preferred vendor partners throughout the United States without being professional, without making sure they get paid, with treating them, we treat them correctly. We treat them how we would like to be treated.
Absolutely. And it only takes one or two vendors that could ruin your whole reputation. And, it's like that now, especially with social media and everything. You get one disgruntled repair and boom, now it goes viral. And yeah, we're in the same boat. I mean, when we get the call from a landlord or a client, I say, just read the bad reviews. All the good ones are great. Just read the bad ones. And then they can kind of get a feel for, okay, these people were never actually your tenants. They just wrote you up because you didn't rent to them. Yeah, and there's a reason we didn't rent to them. So,
Exactly. Exactly.
so I think we've done a pretty good job on the first question.
Well, I've
So,
been known to talk a lot.
oh no, no, this is your show, and I'm just gonna follow your lead. If you say something interesting, I'm gonna go down that rabbit hole with
Okay,
you.
good.
And that's exactly what this is about. This is all about you. And I want to thank you again for being on the show.
You're
So,
welcome.
16, you're in restaurants, you graduate by keeping your eyes open to facilities management. Um, what other influences did you have growing up that led you to think, okay, there might be something here with real estate?
It's funny because real estate was always something that growing up kind of fascinated me. I grew up next to Texas Christian University, and I worked at a restaurant that we had some of Fort Worth's finest in there who were all buying up real estate, including Mr. Hickman. And so when I was able to jump in that real estate realm and be able to see the back workings of it fascinated me. Doing the contract negotiations was one of my favorite things to do. Sending the red lines back and forth to each other, and knowing that it was it was almost a dance, so to speak, when you do these negotiations. I always tell people as a kid, I wanted to be a lawyer or a psychologist. Well, I ended up in between. I'm in sales now.
Well, in property management or facilities management, you're both.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So, Texas Christian University, influenced by other people in your community, was there like, can you recall what was that light bulb moment where it's like, real estate, I got to do this?
I think it was meeting up with Holt Hickman again because it brought back that 16-year-old boy that was just in awe of this man who owned, at the time, I think he had 20 companies, and he built his portfolio by standing on the courthouse steps and getting foreclosures. And he made a lot of money doing it. And so that was so intriguing to me that this gentleman who came from nothing ended up becoming a millionaire through real estate.
Yeah, it's funny how that happens. But, if you put in the reps and do the hard work and keep your eyes open and have a plan, you have a roadmap, you'll get there. But you take action. Like I always reference the book by Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. It's not
Mhm.
sit on the couch and watch Netflix. It's think and grow, which means you got to take action and do these things.
Yes.
So we're going to move down here and we're going to get in. So 16. And how many years have you been in the real estate industry?
So I would say it's been pretty much the last, gosh, I'm going to age myself, last 16. Everything that I've been doing has been involved in real estate in some form or fashion.
So you're 32 years old.
Yeah, I might have a birthday coming up that's going to be 33 on March 9th. But yeah, so
Oh, really?
yeah, Sunday's my birthday.
Oh, well, happy birthday, young man. And you're really
Thank you.
32?
No, I'm going to be 54.
Well, 16 starting in the restaurant business. Okay, so
2008 was when I went with Hickman.
okay, 2008 is when you went with Hickman. Okay, so there's the 16 years.
Yeah.
So this next question, I always enjoy this question because I get to spin the time wheel of the Wayback Machine here. So if you could go back to young Paul working for Mr. Hickman back in 2008, what advice would you have given to yourself starting over? And then the second prong of this question is what advice would you give to a newbie who's starting out today? So we'll go back to 2008 and ask Paul, or you could whisper into Paul's ear, what advice would you have given yourself back then?
I would have probably told myself, don't ever let somebody tell you you can't, because you can. And it's a mindset that I was fascinated, because I heard a sermon that the average human being has 60 to 80,000 unspoken thoughts go through their head daily. And those sound like, Brian, you can't do that. You're never going to make it. You're not ready yet. And so 80% of those are negative. So what I do for myself now, and I wish I would have known this back then, but I call it my spiritual rehab, because I go in and once a quarter, I get all the head trash out, because every time I start having a negative thought, I say, the Lord is my shepherd. And it does two things for me. Number one, it brings me down to about 30% negativity in my mind, and it gets me into that new quarter. But the biggest thing it does for me is it builds my faith with God, because I'm talking to him so much.
See, yeah, positive and negative. I'm weird. I am definitely a weird bird on this one because, and my wife can attest to this, I have like 200% positivity because when that negative thing happens or that obstacle does happen, I think the Chinese have the same character for obstacle and opportunity. They mean the same thing.
Yes.
So when those challenges in life do occur, I'm setting up a lemonade stand.
Yes. Yes. I
So,
just told somebody yesterday that trials and tribulations are just strengthening you for your next blessing.
yep. And you're saying the same words that come out of my mouth because I'll sometimes when I'll journal in, I'll say today's triumphs, trials, and tribulations.
Mhm.
And yeah, they're there all the time. So here we are back to young Paul. Eliminate the head trash. Don't listen to that 80%. And, you know, I've spoke with Nick Allrood. He's a good friend of mine as well. And you have, I think it's a Russian proverb. You have two wolves in your head. And which one is the positive wolf? One is the negative wolf. Which one wins?
Yeah. It's got to be the positive one. Eh,
The one you feed.
yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I I've got a negative dinner bowl for that wolf. Sorry, you're not getting fed here. I've got other important things that I need to put light on.
Hmm.
And that's where,
That's true.
yeah. And
And that's, Brian, that's one of the neat things about, you know, we sit there and we tell the younger generation, hey, you might want to do this, you might want to do that. And what do we do as a younger generation? We're like, we're not listening to you. But the reality is life experience and wisdom really does mean something. The man I am today is nowhere near the man I was 16 years ago. But everything that I went through built me into the person that I am today. And you can ask my wife, I am 100 miles an hour all day long. And she worries. And I tell her, babe, it's going to be okay. We've just got to trust. And that's the hardest thing for us to do as humans, is trust and believe that we're going to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
so you're setting up a great segue here. Now put that spotlight on that newbie who's seeing this podcast for the first time thinking, wow, real estate. I wonder, could I actually do that? What advice do you have for the newbie who's starting today?
What I would say, I would go to the point of invest. Invest in one rental, invest in one flip, whatever you can, and and dig in. Get in with your crews. learn it, see it. You're going to make mistakes. Mistakes happen. But the more you put yourself out there to make mistakes, the better you're going to be in the long run. And that one rental, you're always going to look back on that in the lessons learned when you're buying your 20th. So buy into real estate. It's a great opportunity. And a lot of people say, well, I don't want to be a landlord. Well, that's also a great opportunity, because then you get to deal with how to deal with your tenants, how to deal with the issues. You get to hear it when the HVAC breaks in the middle of a Texas summer. Well, you've got to handle it. And it's just about taking care of life, taking the bull by the horns, as we say in Texas.
Mm. So jump off the fence, get in the rodeo.
Exactly. Exactly.
So you mentioned something else, that becoming that person in journaling today. Every 2 or 3 weeks, I'll just write the same sentence down and underline it. I have to become the person worthy of the life and dreams I want. Like Brandon Turner said it once on one of the bigger podcasts. He was a smaller investor at the time, and he sees these like mega millionaire type of landlords, and he's thinking to himself, wow, wouldn't it be nice to have their opportunities or their cash? Well, at the same time, you have to be prepared to take on their trials and tribulations. You don't get all their triumphs without stepping up to the bar to take on the risk. I mean, the problems that they're dealing with at their level are way beyond trying to fish out a couple of forks out of a drain.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and I keep reminding myself that as well. If I want and desire this dream and this lifestyle, who do I have to be? Not become, but be. Like IBM was a great story for that. When Watson put that all together, when he was designing IBM, his thought was not, we'll become this company over time. Like coming out of the chute, we are we are this company. And that was the mindset moving forward. And I know that's a big elephant to chew on for someone who's seeing this for the first time and says, whoa, 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 I haven't even bought a property yet, and you want me to be this Superman? It's like, no, you have to have that vision. You have to see where you're going. And to your point, you needed that roadmap.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, so jumping off the fence, jumping into the rodeo. And I don't care if it's multifamily, self-storage, industrial, commercial, whatever it is, you may have a different bull. Just,
Yeah.
just grab that bull and make it your bull. Wait, that doesn't sound so good. Wait, are you telling me that real estate has a bunch of bull? Well, it depends.
Yeah, I was gonna say there is some bull that goes around in it.
There is a little bit of bull in the rodeo. Yes, there is. So I'm going to focus in now. Any other, before I jump to the next question, any other advice you would give for that newbie who's sitting on the fence, wondering, should I jump in?
Something that I've always lived by is dreams will remain dreams until you put a date on them. Then they become goals. So many times we find ourselves as human dreaming about our future and dreaming about what we're going to do, but we have no tangible action. And when you put a date on it, it becomes tangible. And that's from your personal life to your professional life. It's easy transferable.
Yeah, deadlines are so critical. I think it's one of Parkinson's law, that work will expand to the deadline you give it.
That's true.
That's why most people start their taxes on April 14th. But you can't, you can't project growth and be prepared for what's going to happen if you're behind the curve on that date. So yeah, actually setting a date to it and putting a label on it saying it needs to be done by this time. And I'll play this game with myself all the time. If I know I've got a month, I'll tell myself I've got 2 weeks.
Yep. That's so true. And going to your point is think about what we grew up with in school is we always had that project that we didn't tell our parents about, but we waited till the last night and we were panicking. And then I remember one, I had my mom drive to the store for a history fair project. And it was the last night, but I had 3 months to do it. So we're trained to do that as from a young age for some reason.
Yeah, I mean, guilty as charged. I had to break those habits. And it's not until you feel the pain of that F on that report or that failure, this, oh, I had the time to do this and I didn't take advantage of it. And you'll beat yourself up. And what does it go? Change will occur when the pain of change becomes less than where you're staying.
Yes.
There's that old story of the hound dog on the porch, and the guy walks by every day, and there's 3 hound dogs. 2 of them are barking, and one's just crying. And eventually the guy walks up and says, I understand these 2 hound dogs, they're barking, but how come this third one doesn't bark and he just cries all day? He says, well, he's sitting on a nail. Well, why does he get off the nail? He says, well, it doesn't hurt that much yet.
Yeah.
So we all have our nails that we sit on until it hurts enough to do something about it. That was some really good advice for your newbies out there. And now I'm going to put the spotlight back on you. This is the deal deep dive where I'm going to ask, what's the best deal you'd ever done? What type of property was it? How did you find it? And how did you finance it?
Okay. So the best deal it would probably be when we did our retail center. We did a ground up retail center, 10,000 square feet. And I was in charge of getting all of our tenants. And so it was kind of handed to me midstream. Our director of real estate had left about 2 years in. And so talk about jumping on a bull. I had to learn how to deal with corporate lawyers real quick and their redlining and so forth. But we opened that store. We had it all pre-leased prior to opening it with national brands. And so as far as the investment on my part, the investment was my time and my learning and my growth. But as far as for the company, it was a $5 million build, and it's now a cash cow because they have those same national companies in there and they just continue renewing because the traffic counts are there. We all know they say in real estate, location, location, location.
Absolutely. And I put a little twist on that because now I say future location, future location, future location. So,
And I'll tell you a funny story, Brian. One of my good friends, when you talk about future locations, he saw a vision in Fort Worth where there were houses and they were lower income housing. But he saw that there was a spark that ignited in this one neighborhood next to it. And when I say spark, it was going to be a retail kind of a destination, bars, restaurants. So he saw that happening. He had the foresight to go in and buy up literally a whole block, left and right side of houses, knowing that in 10 years, that property and that dirt itself would triple. Not only did it triple, it actually quadrupled when he went to sell it. And it was an investment he made, but it was one of the foresight that he without that foresight in real estate, you're not able to seize the opportunities when they exist.
Interesting. Yeah. And you hear stories like that all the time. and you tend to think people have the Midas touch or they're lucky or whatever, but they're thinking and they've got that vision and they're running it through their head and they're probably staring at the ceiling all night while we're dreaming because they're running those numbers, they're seeing their vision and they're seeing or saying to themselves, what if, or what I like to say, why not?
Mhm.
So your deal is a little different than most of the deals we get on the show because this was an internal deal in the company you worked for. So this was a build, you said. So the
New
company
build.
you
Yeah.
worked for, they were building it from the ground up?
Yes. Yes. It was new build.
Okay, so more of a development. This was a commercial space. You may or may not know this part of it because this was an internal job. How did they, well, back to the vision, how did they find this lot and how did they finance the deal?
Well, it goes back to looking forward. Holt had bought this land 30 years ago, and he bought it on the courtyard or courthouse steps, and he bought it for pennies on the dollar. But he knew that the Metroplex would expand. He knew that Fort Worth was going to have to go what we call outside the loop. And so all this property was right next to the loop, which is a highway that goes around Fort Worth. And it took 20 years for it to actually come to fruition. But they went through a financing with their bank. Having a banker partner and lender is very important. They're one of the first things I learned through my other friends who did real estate was if you don't have that banker that has your back, and if you don't have the people in place that you need to get through the title company, everything like that, you're going to have issues. But when it's seamless because you've put together the team that you need, it makes life so much easier.
Right. And you just nailed a few things there. His vision. And again, this is a $5 million project, which is an overnight success that only took 20 years.
Yeah.
So, all my peeps out there watching this, don't get discouraged if the deal or the offer you made this week didn't go through because real estate is absolutely a long game.
It is. It is. And real estate, if you think about it, it's a lot about, I mean, it's a lot like your life and a career because you have to plant yourself somewhere, but you have to have that foresight and that vision of what it's going to be. And if you think about flipping a house, I've walked into houses that people want to flip and I've looked at them and I've said, okay, this could be a awesome house because of this. Where somebody that doesn't have those eyes, they're going to walk in and go, this is crud.
Yeah.
Why would you spend any money on this?
Yeah.
And it's those eyes that you have to see the potential. And it's the same way if you look at yourself. You have to see the potential in yourself to get there.
You say the eyes, but there are other senses involved when you walk through a property as well. Like
We're
for
back to the bull.
for any of the listeners out there, if the power has been out in the property, do not open the refrigerator.
Oh my God.
Don't do that. And when we were back in the day buying a lot of apartment buildings, we used to laugh and giggle because we would say cat pee smells like money. And now for me at this age and having to do it all, for me, cat pee just smells like cat pee.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah, there's when you're starting out and you've got the youth and you've got the time on your side and you can take those risks, absolutely. But now I'm to a point where I'm a little more refined in what I want to put my brand on. So yeah, that was a good story. So as a real estate investor, what's the biggest hurdle you've ever had to overcome, and how did you solve it?
That's a great question. So I think the biggest hurdle is you do I'm going to say the buyer seller dance, because the buyer wants to, or the seller wants to use their title company. The buyer wants to use theirs because we want our team, right? And so lots of times the seller has the advantage because you want the property, right? And so I've had to deal with title companies that couldn't hold their word. They couldn't make the things happen that we needed to happen. The files weren't complete on the day of closing, which gets pushed back. And if you've invested money, every day is money that you're wasting, right? And so I've just had to pray it through and learn from those. And that's why it's so important to be adamant when you go into these negotiations that this is my team and this is who I want. And a lot of people are scared to ask that and hold that ground because they're afraid that the seller's going to walk away. Reality is the seller wants you more than you need them. So,
Yeah, because they're the ones selling.
yeah,
Yeah. No
there's
buyer,
a
no
reason.
sale. Yeah, that's really interesting too, because I'll put this out there. You present yourself as more credible coming out with a team. So if I've got my attorneys, if I've got my property managers, my bankers, my lenders, butchers, bakers, candlestick makers, and I put this together in maybe a 2 or 3 page little dossier. Here's Paul with his experience, here's Brian with his experience. And if I can present this to the seller, then I'm actually coming off as someone who could probably alleviate that seller's stress. It's like, okay, this isn't mom and pop Clampett coming in who are going to try to beat me up on this. They know what they're doing. They're a clean team. And, I guess the other side of that is you could scare the bejeebies out of someone thinking you're going to come in and eat their lunch. But now if you have a track record and you've done this a few times, you add to that credibility kit. I have these people who we've done these type of deals with, please call them. And they'll say, oh yeah, they did what they said they were going to do. They closed when they said they were going to close, and there were no hiccups. Having that team, and for you, it's your protection because you're going in with people who you know and trust. And for that seller or the other side of the table, they say, okay, you know what you're doing. Let's do this. Let's move forward.
And Brian, I want to jump to something that we talked about a little bit earlier. What's the other thing I would tell a newbie is find a mentor. Find somebody who's been in the real estate industry. Go have coffee with them. Buy them a lunch. Pick their brain. The one thing we can steal in this world without getting in trouble is knowledge. And mentors have been pivotal in my life. I've always had one because they help you grow. Once you get past the cockiness of your 20s and 30s, early 30s, and you realize, listen, in order for me to grow, I need somebody that can teach me. And some school of hard knocks. But man, if you have a mentor that's working with you, that's telling you, that's guiding you, it makes life a lot easier.
That's gold. Thanks for coming back to that and circling back. That's really gold.
Thank you.
So, mentors. What a great segue. Was there a book in your investing career that was a game changer for you? Well, I'm going to ask for a couple of books. So, was there one book that you could recommend to someone watching this, and why that book?
Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. And here's the reason why. Mitch Albom was a sports writer for, I believe it was a Detroit Free Press, but he went into writing his own books, and he wrote this book, and it was about a young man who had a older man who was almost like a mentor that he would go visit while he was dying. And so it goes through the process of these two people growing together and growing closer, because tomorrow's not guaranteed. We all know that. And so it was just one of those books. As you can see, I'm a pretty heartfelt person, and I'm a giving person. But for me, it just made me want to give even more to people and give back and help people. And that's why myself, I mentor a lot of younger kids. I say kids, younger men, because it's my opportunity to share what I went through so they don't have to feel the same pains.
Tuesdays with Maury.
Yes.
I'm going to check that one out. I mean, you can't see the half of the books I moved here from the other location, but in the previous podcast, there were racks of books. I've got some over there, got some over there, got some over there, got some over there. We had to spread them all out. Is there a second book that influenced you as a real estate investor?
I think Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Gee, nobody ever says that one.
Well, it's so true, but growing up, I grew up with my mom that adopted me. She was a child of the Depression. So she was born in 1926. 2 years later, she jumps into depression as a 2-year-old and grows up for, 3 to 5 years eating who knows what. And so in our house, money was not something you talked about. And I think a lot of people, it's same in a lot of families, that money is just a taboo topic. And that's why when we get out in the professional world, in the real estate world, or whatever world we're in, people are scared to talk about money. What's your budget, or what's your listing price on this? Okay, it's 70,000. Well, what about 50,000? They're scared to come back with those rebuttals. But when you learn about money, and when you learn about how to use money to work for you, life changes. We're big into stocks right now. And I never thought I'd be the guy that wakes up and looks at the stock market every day. But I do, because I like the feeling of watching the money work for me.
Yeah, I've coined a phrase recently over the past month, reflecting back on my own life, and it's about compounding interest. So for me, and I'll say this out there again, I think it's good and people should hear this. Compounding interest is a sword. You're either going to hold the handle or feel the blade.
I like that.
Yeah. So part of this whole move was restructuring, getting off the blade and holding the handle. So with the deal that we did to switch condos and everything, definitely I am holding the handle at this point. So
That's great.
We did a seller finance on that, and just the interest monthly off of me seller financing that other condo pays for our living expenses.
Wow.
So,
Wow.
but again, it's this 20-year overnight success. I didn't find this in my lucky charms when I was a 13-year-old boy. Oh, compounding interest. Let's open this package. Wow, this is fun. No, it came from the scars and bruises and feeling the blade, saying, no, this is not comfortable and I don't like this.
Exactly.
How can I turn this around and hold the handle? So
And
now your stocks.
one of the things that I always say is change the way you look at things, and the things you look at will change. And people will go, huh? But if you think about it, how we look at things, you could have looked at the condo you were in and said, oh, this is great. I love it. It's perfect. But you had to change the way you looked at it to see that, hey, I'm holding the blade on this sword.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the last books I just finished by Daniel Kahneman was Thinking Fast and Slow. Because that book, well, he won a Nobel Prize on economics. Okay, great. I think I'll read this book. But it wasn't until deeper into the book where he started to peel back how investors think and loss aversion, right? And to your point, I had a beautiful condo. I didn't want to lose that. But then, what is it that I really have here? And, if I walked away, so what?
Yeah.
Right? But what could I have if I did walk away? And there's fear involved with that for sure. Is it going to work? Is it not going to work? But there's also the vision, right? And of course, a calculator helps too,
Yeah.
right? So,
Pretty good friend of yours, and you can carry him around with you all day long if you have your phone.
yeah, exactly. I've got a calculator, and guess what? I can make phone calls with it too. So,
Now,
yeah.
how about like back in the old days where you had to pull one out?
Yeah, and my dad, he used to, when he was still with us, he would be like, "That is so Dick Tracy." And now, like, I can be on my watch. This is Joe Just I'm calling Dick Tracy. Come in, Dick Tracy, right? That just got lost on 80% of my audience, but you and I know what that is. So, yeah, that was really good. I'm going to stretch the metal here. Is there a third book that you would recommend?
Oh, let's see. Of course, I'm going to go blank right now because
I'm
I
gonna,
know there's other ones that I've read that I'm like, oh my gosh.
well, I'm going to help you out here. I'm going to go with the Bible.
Oh, okay.
Proverbs, right? If you go through Proverbs in the Bible, there's so much that Solomon wrote to David there on, debt. Don't build a tower without calculating the cost. All these things. There's so much good financial advice there. And then my other favorite book is Ecclesiastes. Again, Solomon writes, he was a pretty smart dude. And there's just a lot in there. So if there's a lot in there.
It's interesting you say that because I really do. One of my sayings is that if you look at the self-help book industry, it's probably a multi-billion-dollar industry. And the reality of it is we only needed one book, and that's been around for 2,000 years.
Yeah. I mean, granted, it doesn't cover lease purchase options and master leases or seller finance. However, the general principles are there.
You can learn those.
Well, yeah, sometimes better to learn on a podcast hearing somebody else than to get the scars yourself.
Exactly.
Those
That's
horn-
why you're doing such a great thing for these younger people coming in real estate. I mean, in a sense, you're a mentor, but you're just doing it a different way.
Well, this came out of necessity because we moved down here 4 years ago, and I've made reference to this before. The movie with Tom Hanks, Castaway. There's only
Yep.
so much I could say to that Wilson volleyball, and it wasn't talking back to me. So it's like, okay, I need to get back in touch with my peeps and talk to people like yourself who we can have like a legitimate, meaty conversation about real estate and why this stuff can really help people. I mean,
Yeah.
it's one thing for me to say it to a coconut on the beach, but if I can share it and you can share your experience, and everybody has different experience, if we can get that out there, yeah, great. Let's do that. Let's see if we can help people.
Yep.
So we're getting down to the end of it. What's next for you in real estate or investing, and why not get started today?
I would tell you that Marcy and I have talked about buying a second property back in Fort Worth because when we go back, all our family's still there. When we go back, we are having to pay for hotel rooms, all that stuff. But it's interesting because we've talked about vision. In Fort Worth, there's an area called the Stockyards. And by the way, Mr. Hickman owned all of the stockyards pretty much. And his kids, after he passed, partnered with a group to build the stockyards into a destination center. And the stockyards is very historic. It's actually where it was on the Chisholm Trail. They used to bring cows there. It's wonderful place. Well, they're starting to build it up. And some of the older buildings around there are now turning into apartments. They're converting them into apartments. So what our future vision is, we're going to get one of those units. And when we're not there, we're going to use it as an Airbnb. But when we go back, we just mark it off and we have it. And I've already I ran the numbers on it, and we can make some great money, because the thing about the destination of the stockyards is it's not a weekend thing only. There are people coming from all over the world coming to see it, and they'll stay a week. And so that's a perfect example of the vision.
Excellent. Excellent. So again, there's still real estate going on in there. So this last question is a curveball because it wasn't on your list. I love throwing this one in there. It's always the curveball at the end of the show. What's the question today I didn't ask you that I should have?
The question you should have asked me today is, what made Paul?
All right. What made Paul?
Losing my brother at 14.
God.
He died in a motorcycle wreck. My mom adopted me single, and my brother, I have two brothers, or had two brothers. They're both passed. But when I lost Brian, I became angry, and I had a lot of whys, and there were no answers. And so that day that I left Brian's funeral, I walked out of the Catholic Church for 13 years. I didn't go back. The only reason I went back was I went back for my mom's funeral. So fast forward to 2013, what I call a God wink. I decided to volunteer at a nonprofit that helps grieving children deal with the loss of a loved one. And I'm sitting there, and they gave me my group on the first day, and they gave me 14-year-olds. And I looked up and I kind of smiled, and I thought, this is pretty appropriate. And then as we're going through our training, we go through spirituality training, and there's a priest in there sitting next to me. This is 28 years after Brian's passed, but I know this priest. He looks like must be, 40, 30, but he mentioned Texas Christian University, which is where Brian went. And we got up at the break. I said, Father Charlie, I know you. He said, how? I said, you gave my brother his last rites. He said, what was his name? I said, Brian McCarthy. He said, he was the first student I ever had to give last rites to. He died in a motorcycle wreck right in front of the fraternity houses. Oh, and I said, yes. And so the reason I tell that story is I was a 14-year-old kid that became mad at God. And I ran away from the church, and I ran away from him and looking for the answers to my why. And 28 years later, here I am helping 14-year-olds deal with the loss of a loved one. And the gentleman the priest who gave my brother his last rites is right there telling me, you're doing the right thing.
I'm glad you had me ask that question.
Yeah.
So, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience today?
No, because I could have you here for 2.5 hours talking.
Did you have fun?
Yes, I had fun. Oh, you know what you can share? What you can share is, so I'm very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And one of my things when I got on LinkedIn was I wanted to brand myself. And I believe in the personal brand. And so I wear Robacks, which are a line of clothing. And my wife, I might have 55 of them, but that's just because I have to have more than my age. And so my wife told me, she goes, if you're going to buy Robacks all the time, why don't you try to be ambassador for them? And so I filled out the application, and I said, listen, you're targeting young kids in their 20s and 30s, and you have $100 shirt here. I'm on LinkedIn with your perfect clientele. Why don't you let me be an ambassador? So got the news 2 weeks later. now an ambassador this year for Roback. So if they use the discount code HERO15, they get 15% off their first order. And I also used it as an opportunity across market with Hero Facility Services.
Are you wearing one now?
I am wearing a Roback right now. It's a Rhodesian Ridgeback.
Because I'm looking on your LinkedIn and you have, it's different color, but it's the same type of style.
Then I have my Florida Roback underneath it. If the only time I'm not going to be in a Roback is if I'm in jail.
Okay, I'm picturing you swimming in a swimming pool wearing these.
Well, they do have swim trunks.
Okay, well, there it is. Touché, well played. So here we are at the end of the show. If our listeners want to reach out to you and find out more about you or get in touch with you, how can they reach out to you?
They can find me on LinkedIn, Paul McCarthy. I believe it's Paul McCarthy 1101 is my LinkedIn profile. And reach out. I have a book appointment on there. I love meeting new people. I love talking to people. I love getting to know people. Book a time and just say Brian sent me, and I'd be happy to sit down and talk with him.
Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today in our premiere episode from the new location. I mean, wow, I didn't think I'd be saying that for a couple of years, but here we are. So, ladies and gentlemen, our guest today, Mr. Paul McCarthy. Paul, thank you again for all your time and expertise.
Brian, thank you for having me. It's been a true blessing to meet you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that more than you know. So, ladies and gentlemen, all of my real estate peeps, this is Brian Lucier from the Why Not Real Estate Podcast, signing off, and we'll see you on the next one.